In this video, we are going to look at what is willingness to accept and its relationship to the supply curve and producer surplus. So let's start with a question. Let's say we go out there and then we sample a few people. We ask them how much they will be willing to accept to sell their phone. Basically, willingness to accept is asking you what is the minimum amount you will need in order to supply a certain good. Okay, so if you ask them how much they are willing to accept to sell their phone, we are basically asking them how much will you be willing, what is the minimum amount you will need to sell your phone. Okay, so let's say we collect this information. Uh, we have, let's say, 10 people who say they will be willing, the minimum they will accept to sell their phone is $500. Okay, let's say and then we had we asked people how about 600, right? And then we get say 20 people. Okay, so we start with 500. Will you take 500? Only 10 people say they will. Will you take 600? We get 20. Okay, so let's add one more and then say we ask how about 700, and then we get, let's say, 30 people. Okay, so overall now we have our willingness to accept in this column and the number of people who will be willing to accept. What you see is the lower the willingness to accept, the fewer people are willing to supply. So the number of people here, we can also just label that as quantity. You can think about the willingness to accept as the price. Okay, so if the price is 500, how many people are willing to supply phones? We have 10. Okay, if the price is 600, how many people are willing to accept to supply phones? We have 20. If the price is 700, how many people are willing to accept to supply phones? We have 30. Okay, so willingness to accept is also the price, but this is the minimum price. Okay, people are willing to take. Now you can see there is a positive relationship between the willingness to accept and the number of people who are willing to supply. See? So the higher the amount, the more the number of people who are willing to supply phones. So that means that there is a positive relationship. If we were to plot this, we're going to get something like that. This will be our willingness to accept curve. Let's put willingness to accept here on the y-axis and put the number of people on the x-axis. Okay. Now, the number of people is the same as the quantity, okay, of the product, and the willingness to accept is the same as price. So meaning this willingness to accept curve is also our supply curve. All right, so that is the relationship between willingness to accept and supply. Okay, the willingness to accept again is the minimum you'll be willing to accept to sell a product. Okay, so in this case, if you think about each individual we ask as a supplier, this is the minimum amount they would take to supply a phone, and you see there's a positive relationship here. The higher the amount we ask them, the more people want to supply. Okay, so what is the relationship between the willingness to accept or supply curve and producer surplus? Producer surplus is basically how much you value your product or what is the minimum you are willing to accept minus how much you actually sell the product. Okay, so let's say on the market price for phones is or let's say the average market price, let's use average. The average market price of phones, let's say, is $400. Okay, so what is the producer surplus? Now, uh, for if the price is 400, for those who will supply at 500, see, each of them will be making an extra of what? So they were willing to accept 500 and the price is 400. Okay, the minimum they say they will take is 500. If the price is 400, these folks are not going to sell. Okay, because how much they are willing to supply is below the minimum they are willing to accept. Okay, so 400, with 400, none of these folks will supply a phone because for the 30 people, the minimum they will take is 800. Okay, so let's change this price to say 800. What if the price is 800? For those who were willing to accept just 500 to sell the phone, now if you pay them 800, their producer surplus is, right, that is going to be 800. So the price minus the willingness to accept. Okay, so willingness to accept is 500. For these folks, they are making 300 bucks more. How many people do we have there? We have 10. So 300 by 10, you have 3,000. Okay, so for all the 10 people, the producer surplus is 3,000. Okay, so in this case, if we are using willingness to accept, our producer surplus, let me just uh, shorten it to be PS, will be equal to, okay, that will be the price that the good is sold for minus the willingness to accept. So how much you value the product, right? Price minus how much you value the product. Okay, basically. All right. So for those who will accept 800 to sell the phone, the minimum, right? What is their producer surplus? That is how much the phone sells for, 800 minus the minimum they will accept, which is 600. So each person is making 200. How many people do we have there? We have 20. So 200 times 20, that is 4,000. Okay. And the last one, or the last, those who will accept 700, the minimum to sell, we have 30 people. So the price of the phone is 800. They will accept a minimum of 700. So their producer surplus is $100 each. Okay, you have 30 people, so the producer surplus for all of them, right? All the 30 people is 3,000. So this is how you calculate producer surplus when you have information on willingness to accept and the number of people. Basically, the producer surplus is saying how much do you value the product and how much do you sell it for. Okay, if how much you get for selling the product is higher than your valuation of the product, then you have a surplus. If how much you value the product is less than the price, of course you won't sell. You won't sell it. At least you will sell if and only if the price for the product is equal to the willingness to accept, in which case your producer surplus will be zero. Okay, so long as how much you sell is greater than how much you value the product, you get a producer surplus. Okay, so that is the relationship between willingness to accept, the supply curve, and then the producer surplus. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you.